Helpful.
I feel safe.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. We'll call this meeting of the Capital Program Committee to order Thursday, October 12th, a little bit after 1 p.m. All members are present. And this meeting is being audio video recorded. Please don't say or share anything you don't want to be put out to the community. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move. Second.
We're gonna have to do roll call on this. Peter,
Aye.
Howard,
Yes.
Jill,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
and Christy.
Aye.
Yeah, we got that out of the way. I don't see any, I don't have the capacity to see other participants. Actually, I'm just not technologically savvy on the AirPad or whatever it's called. Do we have anyone from the public?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thanks, Sue.
No.
Okay. So we're here today for the town admin special town meeting request for seasonal employee housing, which is supplemental funding. And that is their FY 24 request and their FY 25s. And do we have, is Greg with us or Libby or?
They all are.
They all are. Okay, great. So why don't we just turn the floor over to them, and if you guys want to go through your list as you have it, we have our own.
So, shit. Sorry about that. I'm at home and my Wi-Fi connection is fair and it keeps giving me trouble, and I also can't get into my files, so just bear with me. What is our first item? Is it the e-doc management?
Yes,
Greg, you want to take that one?
sure. Hello, everybody. Hi. I'll start with the FY 25. The first on the list that was provided by Sue is $500,000 for the continuation of the townwide document management system. To kind of give you a background, this has been going on since before COVID. We've engaged in a process to make all of our documents electronic, and we started with public health and natural resources. We migrated to the sewer department. The next round is for Plus, and we've not engaged yet, but we brought down Iron Mountain, who was on site a few weeks ago. They're supposed to have given us a quote by today, but they didn't. And the intent would be to do an on-site conversion of all Plus documents, so the documents do not have to leave the island or the building. So right now we already have funding left over from previous allocations in previous years. This 500,000 would give the initial quote, just they're not a formal quote. It's about $2 million just to do the Plus documents. We have roughly about 750 remaining. This additional 5 will get us going, and we'll see what we would need for FY 26. And that certainly could ask. Oh, should I just continue down or questions?
Why don't we just pause, Greg, for a moment, see if there's anyone who's got questions. And if you'd be so kind, mute after you talk, because then it'll bring the owl up and I can see what's happening. Or maybe not. There you go. Anyone questions, Brooke?
No, I was just waving. Sorry.
Okay.
Stephen, I just was looking at the document management system page and the Rory recommended funding, and the fiscal year 25 number $750,000. Is that supposed to be matching the cost and funding page?
Yes.
Good, but without knowing, so this is a recurring item, so it's possible that's an older, I don't know what you're looking at, so I apologize.
I'm looking at the Rory, but I could show you.
So I guess just to clarify, so for 24, the request is 500. For 25, as of right now, it's still 500, and then 26 is unknown.
Right. See right there.
Yeah,
It is.
So guys, we're in, that PJ for minutes, we're in FY '24 now. So the one we're looking at currently is for FY '25.
Yeah,
Right.
So the
and
question is there's a discrepancy of, between the spreadsheet in our packet and the Rory amount in the request.
So this
And I
report,
apologize, I didn't preview these, with traveling, so.
The discrepancy is on the page called recommended funding source.
if you go to the cost
It's
page,
correct, but it's
oh,
actually,
okay, I will correct that. This report pulls from the cost
yeah, and
page.
actually there's no number in here for fiscal year 24 and also it's 500.
The only reason, normally you don't see fiscal 25 on these reports. The only reason it's there is because of the supplemental funding for special town meeting. It was the only way I could get that to work. But yeah, I will correct the funding source page. So the cost is correct on the, got it. Thank you.
But
Yeah, the two don't talk to each other through plums. So that's why they're different. I will correct that.
so what is the number? I have admin 25004, but
For townwide document 20-003.
yeah.
So the request is 500,000 for FY '25.
Yes.
Questions on the actual project one? Now we've got that kind of cleared up.
how do you get to that kind of a number?
Greg, why don't you address, please?
You're on mute.
You muted.
And you know what, PJ, I want to interrupt for just a second. PJ, just on process, I think with you in the room, and the speakers coming up and taking the screen, I can't see on the owl. Oh. PJ, why don't you pick up chair on this meeting? I
Sure.
just froze, and I think it would just be more to facilitate easier process.
Sure, no problem. Okay, so I believe your question, Howard, was to Greg regarding how they get to the $500,000 estimate for fiscal year 25.
Right.
Greg, if you could provide a background on that and something
Sure.
about.
Since 2017, we've engaged in the e-document project. We were using Data General and image data as two vendors to provide the services. So we have actuals on what it costs to scan the material to our Laserfiche archival system. The next round is a really big project, which is the Plus documents. We've had Iron Mountain, which is one of the industry leaders, come down to look and give us an estimate. They did just give us an estimate. We're intending to use them based on previous experience, but also we want to be able to do this project in-house without having the documents leave the island, which is what was happening previously. And they gave us a very rough estimate of about 2 million. We're waiting for the actual quote. The 500,000 gets us to about 1.5, 1.6 million remaining from previous authorizations. So we put in a round figure of 500,000 in hopes of starting this project and then getting a better feel for what it's going to cost to complete it. So that's how we come up with it. I wish we had the Iron Mountain estimate in hand right now, and they're just working on it. They did say it's a lot of documents, very unique documents.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Are you good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, Brooke?
yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's an estimated timeline in terms of how that 2 million gets allocated up by fiscal year. So, I mean, it looks like what you're looking to do is front load 1.25 of the 2 million. So you've got 750 left plus 500. So you'd have 1.25 to get the project moving forward before you had to come back for supplemental in 26. So
That
I'm thinking about it in chunks and years too.
that's correct, partly in that we are finishing with sewer right now, so we're still going to be dipping into the previous allocation. And then we're gonna be doing a couple of smaller departments before Plus starts, such as town administration, HR, and the documents in finance that we can legally scan and put in. Others, they have a retaining schedule that we can't touch. So we will be dipping into some of the money that's already been allocated. So that's why it's kind of a moving target.
That's helpful.
Okay, great. Thanks, Greg.
I
EJ?
think, Stephen has his hand up.
Yes, Stephen.
Hey, so just a comment for our newer members, these services are, to the extent the subject matter to scan is so different in different departments, and in particular Plus, kind of not on the fly, but it's amorphous until they can come in and give a quote, and those quotes aren't front end loaded more than, you know, the current fiscal year request. My understanding is that this is my understanding is how we've done it in the past, because costs change so quickly in the inflationary environment we're in. So anyways, just a comment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Christie.
Greg, question for you. I recall seeing in the past, some requests maybe coming through the town clerk some years ago about e-filing, documentation, and I'm wondering, maybe, what's the difference between these documents and those documents? And have we embarked on this before, or is this a brand new effort? Like, have we put funds to any effort to e-filing in the past, or how does this correlate with the town clerk's documents?
Sure. Town clerk is actually several years ahead of us in what they've been doing. They're actually using the same services, which kind of got a little sloppy for us with invoicing, but they've been using the same state contract with SHI, data image, and the general code or something like that. They're responsible for all the e-filing. Our project is to make everything accessible via, remotely PDF, not necessarily like our EnerGov system, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah.
So Nancy, before that, Catherine, were already ahead of the game with their town clerk documents. It is actually not part of this funding. They've been doing their own.
Okay, yeah, all right, thanks, Peter.
Hopefully one will help the other in the future down the road.
Yeah.
Great. Jill?
So I just want to understand what offices it does cover.
Okay.
It's just, that's all I
Well,
heard.
I think he said they're gonna tag off a couple smaller offices before they tackle Plus. But Greg, do you just want to recount what the
Sure.
department covered and this will cover going forward?
Sure, we've been allocating funds since about 2017, Lydia may remember more accurately than me. In order to do all town departments, aside from town clerk, this doesn't include schools, airport, water company. And we started with public health before COVID, because their documents were most standardized than anybody else, so it was easier for us to try it and test it out. It worked pretty well. Then we went to natural resources. So those two departments are ongoing, continuously archiving and scanning their documents. Then we moved to sewer. So we're already almost completed with sewer. Then we will be doing some smaller departments. And surprisingly, DPW doesn't have that many. And we will eventually get to them. They have pretty standard permitting type things, but we haven't gotten to them. Oh, that's right. In my mind, we held off on DPW because of the EnerGov project. We didn't want to be messing around with their permits while we were trying to do this. So to answer your question, this funding is just part of previous funding for an ongoing project. It's all been built up to finally get to Plus, which is going to be a beast. Yeah.
Gotcha. Jill, was that cover it? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we were at the sewer department recently and they mentioned they were working on this. And so I didn't know if this was covering them doing that.
Yep.
Gotcha. Thanks, Greg.
Do you see your hand, Christie?
I do.
Yep.
Yeah, Greg, one other question. Going forward, how's this gonna look to the departments and staff? Like, whose responsibility? Are we now going to maintain that to be the process? And whose responsibility will that lie on? Just to get an idea. And I'm assuming I don't see any out costs, so I'm guessing this will be a all-in. Once this is done, every department will be done, full town.
Is Christie, our intention is to be like what public health and natural resources do now. We've bought them optical scanners, so as they receive document stuff daily, they just archive and scan, and sewer starting to do that now. So to be up to each department to maintain it, if we have to purchase the equipment, which is, separate capital requests. The only ongoing oversight would be Mike Alvarez in IT. Technically oversees a lot of this right now, and it would just be overseeing the Laserfish software and the archival system.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Any other Barry couldn't see
Yeah,
it,
just-
raise it high.
That's okay. Just one thing to follow up with Christie is that with Plus, the idea too is to move away from paper documents into a lot of electronic filing. So this will dovetail ultimately into it, less paper shuffling.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah.
Overlap. And once it's done electronically, it'll be held electronically, so there won't be any, scanning after the fact. So,
Yeah, and the beautiful part is just about being able to search and gather information right there without having to manually color the search file.
Barry, I'm sold.
I know you are.
Casey didn't. Okay, great. So I think that covers all our bases, for document management system. Do we want to go to the seasonal employee housing supplemental? Now, I mean, that's next on our list. Is that okay with town admin? And Libby, if that's you, you might be on mute.
Yep, is Brian on yet?
Brian's with the auditors.
Okay, so I might turn this over a little bit to John Lemieux, our OPM for the project.
I lie. Brian is in the waiting room, pardon me.
Oh, there we go.
I did forget he's.
Here comes Brian.
Hang on, Brian he's in the waiting room. Oops.
So I'll give Brian a second to get in.
Maybe just maybe a brief description of the original kind of allocation and the purpose for the employee housing funds.
yeah,
in the supplemental.
So,
30 seconds.
well, yeah, so while Brian's coming in, this is a project we've had in the works for some time. It's intended to be seasonal. It was initially intended to be seasonal housing at Waite Drive. We've kind of copied the Nantucket Yacht Club dormitory style housing. And we secured an appropriation of 8.5 million at the 23 annual town meeting or 22. I can't quite remember.
It's 23 here.
Thank you. So the original intent was to put lifeguards in here, which still is the intent. And as we were going through the design with the architect, we began to talk about the idea of having at least a couple of year-round apartments in here, either for employees on a sort of a transitional basis. There might be people in between housing. We might have consultants that could use a place to stay for several nights. We might have one of our commuting employees or remote employees who come here regularly to have a place to stay. That could be a potential landing spot for them. It could be an apartment for maybe a year-round employee who is responsible for being the sort of caretaker of the property. So the idea is that primarily, though, lifeguards and other seasonal employees would be housed here. I think we have a total potential of 72 beds, but anybody on the team can correct me. Okay, thank you. And we had an alternate in our bid for an additional building, which would have potentially more beds, like maybe up to 72. And we would repurpose the existing housing that we are using for seasonal staff, including a house at Orkawa. I never can remember if that's Orkawa or Monahans. It's sort of interchangeable. Thank you.
That's a question.
We have some housing at 39 Washington and some housing down on Washington Extension, and we've been renting some seasonal housing from the Mariah Mitchell on Washington Street. I think it's 31 maybe. And we wouldn't need that anymore. And we'd repurpose this other housing or properties for if you want to know more about that, I can go into it, but the idea is to have a firm place for our seasonal employees to be housed. So that's the purpose of it.
So that's the
bid-
original request, yeah.
Sorry,
I said, yep, okay, so that's the background, and so I don't know if you want to hand it to.
sorry, yep, that's the background. We put this project out to bid, and Brian and or John, I'm gonna let you guys take it from here.
I think John will take it and then I'll discuss the number that we need.
Okay,
Sure. Can I share my screen? Yep, I think I can here. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep.
Great. So good afternoon, everybody. John Lemieux from Vertex. So basically the total project budget as it stands today is comprised of a bid in hand from J&J Contractors. They are a modular builder. They own not just the construction, but the balance of the design. The fee below that for schematic and site design, that $180,000, that's already contracted to Winslow. Winslow was the schematic design and site designer that did the actual site plan that the bidders were able to review. The OPM charges there, you have the OPM charges to date, charges to go from October of this year through April, and then the full-time presence from April through October or November of next year. The FF&E, furniture, fixture, and equipment, 72 basically setups for that. That is based on a recent estimate we did off of the state bid list for another project. Includes, everything standard: bed, bureau, desk, chair, for each of these rooms, as well as a delivery premium and a little bit of escalation because of the timing. We also included some allowances for IT and data connections, any utility back charges from the town, appliances, for those apartments that Libby discussed, as well as any third-party testing that's required by code, compaction testing, concrete samples, those sorts of things that are standard with municipal construction projects. All of that totals 10.8 million. 10.9, we put a 7.5% contingency on this for just in case, brings total to 11.7 minus the 8.5 previously appropriated, leaves us with the $3.2 million ask. And I will turn that over to Brian.
Thanks, John. So the delta that, as John mentioned, is $3,204,000. The supplemental appropriation that we obviously is the $3,204,000. We would be proposing to fund that through Article 9 of the special town meeting has a request to transfer $1 million, which was originally appropriated in the general fund budget for housing assistance to employees. And as I think some of the members of the committee are aware of through various discussions through FinCom and et cetera, that program was never able to have been established. So we are proposing transferring that $1 million, which was unable to be used for that purpose from the town meeting of April of 2022 to this particular project. And then I believe it's Article 10, if I'm correct, is the supplemental funding request, which we would be proposing authorizing a borrowing for the remaining $2,204,000 of the supplemental of the total $3,204,000 supplemental request.
Okay, anything else on your guys' end, or do we want to field some questions? I'm sure we'll have some over here. You guys, town admin, good, okay.
I think
I'm sorry, it's Article 12 is when it was. I'm sorry.
unless you guys have some more questions of us, I think we're good. And I guess maybe we want to just emphasize that the longer we wait on this project, the more expensive it's going to be.
Yeah. Continuing theme for most supplemental funding.
Yeah.
I mean, let's go around the room, I guess.
I just had a request. I was gonna just see if, could someone send that document, that modular, cost breakdown?
Yeah, I don't have it. I will get it from him.
Okay, that'd be
Absolutely.
great.
Great. Okay, Brooke?
Just for clarification, we're talking about 72 bedrooms of furniture, but this doesn't contemplate 72.
Construction 72.
32 beds.
It's 30,
32 to 42 is what it says in the
Right.
story.
Right.
yes, yeah. So just to be clear, I know 72 is if the second building got built, but we're only doing one building, correct? At this point?
At this point, but isn't there the potential for 72 in
There's-
this building?
Yes, there's potential for 72 beds in this, and under the construction format that we're proposing in that
Okay.
singular building itself.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
that's not what's clear in the Rory, Brian, because
Yeah.
it says 32 to 40.
Right.
Right, well, I think originally it was that, but as we went through the project, John Lemieux, correct me if I'm wrong, but the design, as we went through the project, allowed us to actually expand the number of bedrooms in each.
There was this,
Units.
again, it's not 72 bedrooms. It's set up dormitory style with the exception of those apartments. So it's
Yeah.
doubles and triples. So the reality is the town has flexibility. If you said, you know what, this would be a better sell
That's
to
max.
residents to put less furniture in it. But that's, this is the high end of the occupancy count.
Right, so just to reiterate, still talking about single building, expanded scope, apartments, and a max of 72 beds across the apartments and the bedrooms therein.
Correct.
That's accurate, more or less, okay, just so we're all under that, basic
Yeah.
understanding.
Libby, just to get a sense of it, what percent does this cover your seasonal employee needs?
I
I know that there's, there's the barracks for that, but for what you guys are looking to cover, what percent does this cover for that?
I think this probably would cover almost 100.
Nice.
And outside of the CSOs, that's lifeguards and.
Outside of the CSOs, there are lifeguards. There are sometimes DPW seasonal, there's natural resources and or health seasonal, and the occasional intern here and there.
Got it. And it covers all those other departments in addition to the lifeguards.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, great.
And it's possible that there could be some CSO overflow a little bit, so.
Yeah, but it'll,
All right.
better to have too much than not enough, if we're got one shot at it, so to speak, but.
So, just to me, an important element of this is making other properties available for other housing needs for the municipality is a really big piece of this. That, some of those other structures are more suited to single family living and so forth, and having just gone through the police chief search. We had 10 applicants, then we advertised it with housing and we got 40 applicants.
Of course.
So the world knows we have a housing problem now. So we're gonna have to take this on much more. So this is a great project and we should do it before it gets more expensive.
Right, understanding that some of those existing housing options that they currently have are being rented, so I don't know if we can rent those continuing in perpetuity if we had the option to, but, okay, this side of the room?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, are we gonna rent these rooms to people, or is this just part of their pay package?
All of the seasonal employees pay rent.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. Barry, thanks.
Is there a potential for starting to coordinate with other heavy duty housing hitters like the airport and or the school? Because we're getting requests in from those are probably the three biggest requests: the town, school, airport. There may be a few others out there, but I'm just wondering if there's a coordination effort.
There will be, yeah.
Or can there be in the future? I mean, some of the requests for single dwellings or duplexes have been coming in at around 3 million. When I look at this project in comparison to that, this, they pale. And I think, the public would maybe have the same sentiment as well too. Why are we paying for 3 different types of things? So I just want to throw that out there. This project I think is good and I'm supportive of it, but I want to look toward the future a little bit.
The valid perspective, I think this one being mostly seasonal suits some different needs, and the 3-bedroom per room
True.
can have some,
But
specific.
yeah, when I
use
when I
necessary.
compare what they're going to accomplish
Sure.
versus what's coming out of some of the other
Yeah.
requests.
I think a mix of the two, and at this stage, it seems like it'd be hard to backtrack and put together something that large scale
Right.
going forward to keep.
But
in
going
mind,
forward,
Certainly,
going
yeah,
forward,
no,
there's certainly
very valid point.
opportunities.
Anything else at this point, Barry?
No, thank you.
Good, Howard?
Could you characterize for me, because I'm not familiar with this, basic timeline for this of
What do you do?
architectural engineering, breaking ground and completion? Just curious.
Sure. The project as proposed, with an acceptance at the upcoming town meeting. The design builder would get moving with the remaining portions of the design, would get the project approved through the town processes. They would look to break ground in April. And again, start the project in April, production, work on foundation. You would look to see the boxes coming on site sometime towards the end of, mid to end of the summer, with wrapping up completion roughly October, with everything buttoned up and turned over to the town. So it will not be available for the summer of 24, but certainly for the following summer.
Thank you. That's impressive though.
Yeah, and if it's October, November, and it gets pushed out of, we know there's been delays with all sorts of construction, as long as it's before the summer of 25, essentially, we're in a good space. Not that we want to
Yeah.
build that in, but
Don't
realistically.
let them hear that.
I mean, I thought we were muted. Christie,
Through you, can I ask for a clarification from Barry?
you may?
Just what, like, when you say coordination effort, what are you referring to? Just curious.
What I'm saying to you is that we're getting, rightly so, housing requests from a number of different areas. The airport,
Yeah.
school system, town administration. There may be a few other pockets out there in the future, but those are the big three right now that I see.
Yeah, you're, okay.
So it begs the question of, first of all, trying to coordinate efforts to see where we can make the best use of our money with that. Everything could be located on one site, for instance, potentially. But when you start looking at the fact that we're now at the airport came in at roughly about 3 million, schools coming in at about 3 million, they pale in comparison to the number of people that are being put in. I'm just saying to you that I think there, as time is moving along, we may need to adopt a much more holistic approach. And I may get lectured about the airport here because of the FAA thing, but on the other side of the coin, that doesn't mean that may be something that could be addressed with offsite.
Yeah. Now, whether it's the school or the airport or the town, you've got 3 different management groups. I get the coordination part of it, just as far as a discussion.
Right.
But I think the impacts on one spot are, might be too significant. But I don't know.
Well,
and remember, this is a dorm and it's not
I
like
know.
the other houses that they were building. And the other project that was over 3 million had a huge amount of infrastructure in it for the airport.
They have a lot fewer bedrooms, so you
Yeah.
could, but we're not gonna talk about that today.
No, I don't, I just.
Yeah, guys.
Theory,
It's valid. This is a really,
It's a
kind
good-
of efficient
it's a
way
good
of solving
comp.
this problem.
valid in theory, especially to consider moving forward.
Yeah.
For
Right,
for
and-
certain,
Right, the only other perspective you need to bring to it is how is the public looking at this? Because they're gonna do the snapshot thing with this. They're not gonna go into the depth we necessarily are going into, but your chances of success when you can say we're doing it in a very holistic fashion, I think. Has a
Success
much
of
better
approval,
probability of success.
success of approval at town.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Brooke, did you have any follow-up?
I absolutely agree that it's, as a select board member, I think it's a very interesting concept to have, like, Massachusetts has a new housing secretariat, right? Having coordinated conversations about what assets can be shared among different entities.
Exactly.
And the other point is, it is a lot cheaper to house people in dorms than to house people in single family
line.
dwellings. And summer seasonal people will tolerate a dorm for 3 months. Your
Right.
DPW director is
No.
not gonna live in a dormitory.
So,
So we do have housing needs that cross family type, income level, across the community and never mind in the municipality. So I agree, more collaboration across the system is a good idea.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I take it in and we'll
So with all in
Just
agreement,
follow up.
with all in agreement that in theory, that's, important to consider and discuss moving forward with regards to this
BJ?
request. Do we have any, is Steven? Yeah?
Yeah. So a couple things. Procedurally, I appreciate the fact that we let this run a little bit. We're going to need to take a vote next week on a recommendation in order for that to have any consequence, positive, I would imagine, for special town meeting. So procedural on the master plan, a discussion amongst the primary parties of course is beneficial. I think we're all in agreement on that. The practicalities of how granular that master plan can be is going to be a topic of discussion itself, which is really outside our purview. But it is beneficial for us, I think, to support it, the concept overall, even if it's just a sit-down discussion on a periodic basis to see between these parties what works and what doesn't. But I think the other aspect of that is, there's limited money, there's limited land, and then balance that against any discussion of how closely to coordinate. So that's on the bigger topic. On this particular project for me, looking at the dollars and cents, 11.7 million, your assumptions are it's 30-year useful life, 80% occupancy. You're going to boil down to about $580 a month per person. That doesn't include your carrying costs. Carrying costs, you get into cost minimization. So what is our funding mechanism? I'd like to hear a little bit about that. I think it's safe to presume the occupancy of around 80% is reasonable, but obviously the higher occupancy, the better. The other aspect of that, I think that's important to keep in mind are two. One is, as Brooke mentioned, the opportunity that avails itself to the town, providing employee housing in more family-like settings for personnel of different levels is beneficial. This facility would open those up. And of course, the town is obligated to provide services. Services require employees require housing, and our housing costs are just skyrocketing. So it seems to me this is a beneficial project. Again, we're getting into a level discussion we would not ordinarily at this point because we're going to be making a recommendation next week. I would like to get a little bit of feedback on the only open item for me, and one we typically review, which is from Brian, perhaps through you, Mr. Chair, and Libby. What are we looking at as the funding source? What does that kind of shape up as?
Yeah.
Well, we currently have an $8.5 million debt exclusion. The supplemental funding, as I previously mentioned in the meeting, there's $1 million request in Article 9 of the special town meeting to transfer from the previous authorization for the employee rental assistance program, which was never able to get off the ground. So we're asking for that $1 million to be transferred to this project, which leaves a gap at that point of $2,204,000, which we would be asking for in Article 12 of the special town meeting. There's a request for supplemental funding, and that will be a borrowing authorization.
So in other words, Brian, our long-term costs will be just the $2 million that's not covered by or 2.2 million that's not covered by the $1 million transfer.
Correct. On top of the $8.5 million debt exclusion that we have right now.
And the debt exclusion, what's the term on that? Length of
It
years?
was whatever when we fully borrow it, it'll be whatever we make for an amortization schedule at the time. Usually we do most of our amortization is between 15 and 20% to stay consistent with our financial policies in terms of the debt load as a percentage.
Yeah,
but we'll blend, we'll model that out when we get closer to permanently borrowing that to determine what length of amortization we'll use.
So thank you. So for me, just to round out the topics I brought up, given the cost, given the per bed cost equivalent, even with the longer term carrying charges that might come into effect, balanced by the fact that one, the town needs to provide the services, and two, we the town, the community, are getting other housing opportunities arise. Town housing stock is going to These all seem very beneficial to me. Thank you. Oh,
Great,
they'd
thank
be
you.
more beneficial at 2.5%, but you know, that's not our rate environment.
Of course. Back into this room, Jill.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
just making a point, that we're looking at it because FinCom didn't want to look at this and make a motion on it until Capcom had reviewed it. So that's why, that's the background there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
TJ, just on that, well, it's topical. Jill, when does FinCom meet on this again?
I don't think for a while, Brian, do you know, I
Tomorrow.
haven't seen
Well,
it,
we'll
but not till
I
really close.
believe the technical amendments are, Libby, is 11/2 the correct date that I have in my mind? 11/2 is when FinCom will present this as a technical amendment to FinCom to bring to town meeting.
Thank you. So we don't need to vote it today and then ratify at the next meeting. We can just put it on the agenda and vote at the next meeting. Okay, thank you.
If you guys want to vote, we could just do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's just easier with open meet. We'll put it on the agenda.
They got all the stuff done in the
Is there
treasury.
any,
Yeah, so they got a lot of stuff done.
Raise a good point. Go ahead, do it.
Yeah.
I mean,
George
Stephen,
has
any
time next
reason that
week.
we shouldn't vote on it now?
No, I think there's no rush, so we'll just put it on the agenda. If we voted on it today, we'd have to, we're gonna have to vote on it again next week anyways, because it wasn't noticed. So
Oh, all right.
we'll just deal with it next week.
It's on the agenda. It's item,
That we
Yeah, but
vote
there's
for it,
nothing about a vote, so we'll just
it's
carry
on
it
the
for now.
agenda. It's item number,
that we're taking a vote or that we're doing.
special town meeting request seasonal employee housing. That was specifically to talk about that.
Stephen
Yeah.
apparently noticed.
Yeah, I think
Just when they
I
ordered
feel more
the-
comfortable having it be down as a vote.
All
So we
right.
don't typically vote on these things. I'm sorry, Sue. I hope that works for you.
Sure, I'll add it back. That's fine to next week.
Thank you.
I'll defer to the chair here.
No, that's good. Let's go ahead.
Great, okay, everyone good
Yes.
on this one? Okay. Getting back to the current fiscal year, looks like, coastal resiliency planning for $1 million, fiscal year 2025 is next up. Libby or whoever might want to handle this.
So this is basically an annual request for projects that the select board might want to take on at the most likely recommendation of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. And there are things that sort of pop up here and there that might be grant matches or cost to engage a consultant to prepare a grant or something along those lines. We might need to hire a consultant to look at a particular coastal resiliency issue that's cropped up. For example, we have, I think we have a couple of existing appropriations from prior year town meetings, and we're using a little bit of one of them to address some issues with the Baxter Road erosion control project. And I think we may have used a little bit of it to apply for a grant for one of the recommendations in the coastal resiliency plan related to a downtown flood barrier project. So this has been a high priority of the board, really. And so we're putting it forward at their request to have at the ready sufficient funds to address consulting or engineering needs.
Okay, thanks. So it's essentially rinse, wash, repeat, same thing each year, but it goes towards different items, but for the same reason. I guess my only question would be $1 million a year. Does it seem like we're spending that $1 million a year? Do we have a nice chunk sitting that hasn't been spent over the last couple of years? Are we spending 80-90% of it each year?
I think it's a little too early to tell just yet. For example, we've gotten into a not entirely planned out, but getting to be planned out partnership with the land bank for Washington Street. Coast design options for the Washington Street corridor for coastal resiliency measures. And we're already into that at maybe 250, 300,000, and that's only going to go up. So even if we don't spend it all in 1 year, it may be that if we have a bit of a I don't like to use the word cushion, but if we have some available funds that aren't entirely committed, it can be very helpful when things like this come up. So are we spending the full million every year so far? No. But I think we may find that we might be in a situation where we're gonna say, oh, we need 1.5 for whatever.
And if there's enough of a,
So
backed up surplus from a couple of years, it can go towards that. And so the effort with the land bank in Washington Street, that's an concrete example of something that has been pulled from these funds. And then obviously, once we have a larger ask for, in the millions and millions of dollars, that would be its own separate request sometime in the future
Exactly.
that comes from the
Mhm.
efforts that these funds are going to plan and get ahead of.
exactly.
Okay, great. Christie?
Was the rep on the coastal resiliency. I will try to get an idea of what funds we've spent from previous years and sort of what what that was earmarked for. I think it'd be good for us to all know that.
Yeah.
I do think that the idea was to have a cushion. I think as time goes on, that cushion is going to become a piece of paper, because we are all aware of the costs down the road for coastal resiliency. So, but I wanted to, so that was my comment to the committee, but I did want to ask Libby, this process of allocating money to coastal resiliency needs, would you like to see that differently? Is it okay that it's going in without a specific request? Does it give, I know it gives them some flexibility to use the funds, but I know, and it's still in its early stages, but it's been, I know staff is hitting it hard.
They
So
are. I thank you for that ask. I think at this point, it is good to have that flexibility. As we proceed on, I think we're going to get a little more focused with very specific projects. And I think some of those are in the out years of the CIP.
Yeah, yeah, with the maybe the coastal resiliency districts. Did you guys discuss those? Yeah. All right. That's all I had. Thank
I can
you.
imagine those requests in the out years will be pretty sizable.
Yeah.
Based on what's being discussed, so.
So just for clarity, the 417 or $70,000 grant that we just got, Leah secured for us for coastal resilience, do we have to have the funding approved to get those grants? Is there, I know sometimes with grants, you have to have it in hand to get it, to get the grant. So just so you all know, I don't know whether you caught that, but for the flood barrier project, the Natural Resources Department just secured an over $400,000 grant.
Coastal zone management.
CZM,
Grant.
yep.
Yeah.
So, that's another reason why having this
Software would be.
piggy bank of resources
Okay.
allows them to dig in for these grants.
Is this the rainy day fund that Matt B keeps referring to? Because he gets listed as the person who made the request in here.
Oh, I don't know.
You know how he talks about we need a rainy day fund for coastal resiliency?
It's probably, and I think it's, it's changing all the time too, so having the flexibility feels important to me. I'm on that Washington Street planning group. And being able to commit to moving that forward and knowing we had the resources to share the cost with the land bank was critical to
getting them to do it,
keeping it rolling and and that collaborative effort.
right.
Yeah, I mean, given the ongoing process that coastal resiliency planning is and implementation is going to be for the next decade, 2 decades, it's probably, like roadway roadway repairs or cobblestone repairs. It's something that's
Gotta keep it.
we have to make sure that we're nimble, flexible, and able to keep up with what we have to do. Anybody on this side of the room? Mary Jo, Howard, no? Okay, well, I'm sure obviously we'll get used to this one if it'll be back every year. So sounds good. Okay.
Maybe a hybrid. Maybe there'll be still the fund,
Well,
but
plus
there will
the
start coming in
individual requests,
some new
of course,
requests.
those will be,
Yeah.
Sure,
Yep.
sizable. Looks like next up for 2025, we have EV charging stations. I know this has been hotly discussed in the past, so let's see where we start. We'll give town admin any chance to update or new plans with regards.
Sure, I'll jump in on this one. I've submitted this request really on behalf of Lauren Sinatra from the Energy Office, primarily because this fits more into the select board's green communities program that, as you may remember, the select board adopted the Green Communities program from the state, which requires that we have so many charging stations over so many years, and so forth and so on. This is a request for just 4 new charging stations. So that's 8 ports. They're only level 2s. They're not level 3s because they are very expensive. And for us to be able to put them in, we need to make some significant infrastructure improvements for electricity. The intent, we've identified spaces for downtown and like in the town lot, as well as some non-public use. We are trying to purchase more town vehicles that are electric, so this would also help us to provide electric charging stations for town vehicles. Right now, we only have 1 dedicated to town electric vehicles, which is at C Street. And concurrent with this, Lauren Sinatra has applied for and received a it's not a grant, what do you call it? A rebate for 4 additional charging stations that we are looking at putting at local beaches. So at Surfside and at jetties. So that's where we are. This is an ongoing project. I don't have the Green Communities criteria in front of me. That's more of a Lauren thing. But we do have our, greenhouse gas and emission and all that carbon restrictions that we're supposed to meet by 2035.
Okay, so just to clarify, if anybody else might need it, so the 100,000 is for 4 charging stations, which is 8 ports, and then Lauren has secured, rebate for another 4 stations separately.
And yes, correct. And those would be, we had to identify specifically where they would go. So we identified 2 at the upper lot of jetties and 2, I believe, at Surfside Beach.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So I guess it'd be 8 in total, 100,000 for the 4. Then rebate for the other 4. Okay. I think I saw Jill's hand first.
So Greg, can you tell us, based on the money that you got just approved in May? Because I thought that those charging stations were going towards jetties and Surfside Beach potentially, but it sounds like that might get covered by a rebate now.
Exactly. If we get covered by the rebate, we won't be using the money that was approved at town meeting.
Okay. And you can't use that money for these?
Well, we could, that'd be great. And we could then maybe not allocate money in FY25, but we're probably going to need to anyway in order to meet our goals. If we do manage to succeed with the rebate, we have to have the chargers in ground by January 26th of next year. So it's kind of a hard rush for us right now. We can't get those, downtown, but we could do those at the beaches. We had Rise Engineering come down, do a quick, assessment of it, blah, blah, and we probably can make that happen. So we're trying to order the material and everything right now. If we do get that happen, that frees up the money that was allocated this year, that we could maybe move forward and start putting in the downtown charging stations, which would then free up this money, hopefully FY25 for additional chargers, or maybe 2. This wouldn't even cover 2 level 3 chargers. That's how expensive they are right now. They're running roughly 60 to 75,000 for us to order and install and upgrade the electricity.
But the ones that approved in May, weren't those level 3? Or were those 2s?
Those, as far as I recall, there were 2s.
Okay. I know we increased it because we didn't think it was enough, but I can't remember if it was 1 to 2 or 2 to 3.
Again, I'm not the expert. We probably should have had Lauren in on this call for this one, but yeah, they're so expensive and they're really backordered too. But we even spoke with Don Allen. They're trying to get them and tough.
So if they're back ordered, then how are you gonna get them installed by January?
The 3s are back ordered.
The level 3s are
These
back ordered. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think I recall the discussion was, that we were hoping that we could switch it to 3s last year, but I think we might have stuck with 2s. Might be the reason that we're.
Yeah, and I think.
I thought we went from at least 1 to 2.
I mean, we went from 1 to 2.
Maybe
one
that-
to two. I don't think there were threes. and
Because we
that's
beefed up
what I
the
read.
amount. We asked them to request more last time.
To make sure that we could step it up to two.
Because how long does it take on these, the ones you're putting in, like how long is a car gonna have to sit there to be fully charged if they're like two-thirds empty?
Yeah, depending on the size of the vehicle battery, it could take, for a level 2, it could take 4.5 to 5 hours.
Right.
And I don't know if you were watching with the select board is in the process now of they have adopted a new EV charging policy by which by the end of October, early November, we hope to have rates in place and time limits. So they will no longer be free charging downtown and hope for turnover. But that will mean that vehicles will not be fully charged if they're zero, of course, by the time they leave.
PJ?
Yeah, oh, Stephen?
Hey, so my recollection is last go around, the initial request was level 1s. They were upgraded to level 2. It was brought up in the Florida town meeting and Lauren clarified that there. Then on the cost, cost per use or cost for use. Greg, I didn't catch the select board meeting. Can you elaborate? Is this going to be some type of a rebate from the state through the license plate program? My understanding is the state, when you get an EV license plate, you go on a roll and there's some method of collecting revenues to offset the cost for charging. Is that something is that along the lines, or this is a completely different program that the select board is setting up?
So completely different from what the select board is setting up. The select board is just setting up a policy, or have established already a policy to recoup energy expenses for the charging stations because they're free right now. What you may be referring to is when we first got the charging stations, the state did pay for us. I'm not sure if it was through the license plate fund, like license plates or whatever, certain amount of funding to put in the charging stations and pay for electricity for 2 years. But that expired. The town's just been paying, and Lauren put together a spreadsheet of how much the town pays, per, charger, which ones are used more, what the average kilowatt is, all that stuff. But I don't think, unless Libby rings a bell, but she never said anything like that to me.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Brooke?
Yes, so as far as I understood, there was a program of sorts that paid for the electricity for a period of time. That's done. And we've now instituted a policy to recoup the cost of the electricity plus an admin fee to administer it, the billing and so forth, as well as parking restrictions and fines so that people who hog an EV station pay beyond a certain number of hours of charging they have to move, or it goes up to from the electricity costs of about $2 an hour to $5 an hour. And then fines for non-EV vehicles parked in EV spots. So there's now a policy in place, and it's a policy that can be changed. The rates can be changed depending on what the actual cost of the electricity is. We didn't set rates. We just set a framework to allow us to charge for it.
Exactly.
Very important.
So.
Yeah.
Christie?
I'm just wondering if we're just making decisions on costs and we're not thinking about, I know I know that the, level 3 is very expensive, but if you have a level 3 that is efficient and allows you to manage it better, with costs, with timing, that is not the better solution. I get it that they're back ordered. It's just a question.
Yeah, I don't think we based on the back ordering. I think we were just trying to be cost efficient with our asks, but it's very possible. Maybe we should be looking at allocating more funds and ordering them and getting the electrical infrastructure underway in hopes of having something like, level 3s installed over the next 2 years. But I don't know if that's a policy decision or you guys make that decision. I don't know. I don't have the cost for them in front of me. I don't have anything from Lauren. She has done that research before, but because it's not being asked, I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah,
Last
with
year-
me?
Yeah,
last year we encouraged
that's a
them
good
to.
point. So I just wondered how you make that decision.
They went back last year. Maybe we should have Lauren come and talk to us.
Guys,
Yes, I was gonna defer to you on recommendations if we wanna try to,
I think we're gonna have Lauren.
yeah.
Guys, on the policy side of it, there's two ways we can have a discussion and request some additional information now. Additional information being, have you considered this? And if not, can you please do that and get back to us? This being level 3 deployment and the pros and cons. And then the follow-up to that, if we didn't act in that manner, or even if we did, is we can make a recommendation, line item recommendation on our particular recommendation for this expense. So we may find that after, for example, after additional information, it's premature for the town due to a variety of factors, not least of which is back order, and availability and the rebate structure program and so on and so forth, that we're encouraging the targeted level 3 deployment. And that would be our recommendation in addition to if we voted in favor of this. So just a couple of scenarios on how that could play out. I do think it would be beneficial if Lauren can, or either come in or through town admin, provide some additional information on the pros and cons. Maybe it'd be beneficial to do two-step, is the pros and cons of the level 3 over the level 2. And the cons obviously would include deployment issues and cost issues, including within the state rebate framework. And then we can review that and decide if we want to have a full-on discussion with Lauren present, which I don't have an issue with, but I'd like to see where it fits into our schedule. So if we could do it in 2 phases, Greg, that'd be helpful.
I'm fine with it all. We have hopefully, rebates for level 2s anyway, so at least we're making some progress, and I like to hear it from the horse's mouth. Lauren is definitely well versed in this, and however you want to handle it's fine with me.
Okay, so why don't we get a list of the pros and cons, maybe a paragraph introduction and the pros and cons, and then we can elevate discussion. If we decide to elevate discussion, we'll be better informed. It'll be a better use of everyone's time. And if that's sufficient, then we won't need to take additional time other than talking about how it applies to this particular request. Back to you, PJ, sorry.
No, thank you for taking that clarification, very succinct. I guess any other last chances, ED station, sounds like we have some more information coming.
Yeah, that'd be
So
good.
we can pick it back up then, and good to know that we have the rebate structure in place, so we can move forward with some now. Okay, moving on to the next 2025 request. We have potential mass DEP PFAS requirement for 250. I'll leave that to Libby or other.
I'm on the hot seat again.
Yeah.
So this one is a placeholder. You may be aware of the work the town has been doing regarding analyzing, studying, and trying to prevent sources of PFAS among the throughout the island. We've already allocated about $13 million for various projects and studies. Last Thursday, the town landfill became the first landfill in the state to be tested for PFAS in groundwater, surface water. We submitted an application in December 1st, 2021. It's called the SW22 form in order to do this. DEP was very reluctant to do it. We had a lot of discussions. They finally came around and said, yes, they don't want to do it because what we find or what happens here sets a precedent now for the rest of Massachusetts. They finally came down. We did our first round of tests. They're going to be 3 rounds of testing. And we just don't know what's going to happen after that. Now, if something comes in and they say, and I don't want to alarm anybody, but there's something there and we need to take action on it, we just want to make sure we have some funds available. And, we hope nothing happens and we don't use the money, but who knows? And maybe we don't have any precedent because there's no other community that's done this. And so we just kind of drew up a number based on the cost per sampling and the cost for our PFAS consultant, CDM Smith. So that's kind of really all I have for it.
Okay, so very preliminary, kind of a dart throw, and sounds landfill specific, obviously a lot of other PFAS related issues. So you mentioned the 13 million already spent. Is that town or was that through the airport?
No, this is 13 million allocated, appropriated,
Okay.
not yet spent.
Gotcha, but
We have spent, a good chunk of that is about 9 million that will be going in for the water main project that is beginning west of the airport at the end of this month. And we have an $8.3 million SRF loan for that, but we did allocate 9 million at town meeting last year for it and at the ballot. But the rest has been studies and sampling and protocol handling and just a bunch of things.
yeah, well, the airport had, spent quite a bit, so it sounds like the town is on the way.
Absolutely. Yep, the airport led the way, actually.
Yeah. Anybody this room? Howard?
Did anybody have a crystal ball of what the remediation might be required in the event that bad things are found there?
No, and that's why I said there's no precedent from any other landfill because we're the first to do it. The reluctance or the hesitancy, the delay in DEP getting back to us kind of shows their level of concern perhaps or reticence about it. So we don't know. Like I said, it could be nothing or it could be more sampling or I don't know, it could be something way more than $250,000, but we just kind of figure we may have some money put aside in case we have to do something immediately.
Thank you.
Anything else? Steven, good? Sure, we'll
Yeah.
have more.
Couple quick questions through you, Mr. Chair. Greg, what's the likelihood we're going to see this in other areas of the town's functions? I mean, obviously, airport is one area that's being, in the works being addressed. Is there any chance we got the landfill? Is there any chance it's going to come up at sewer, any other operations? And if so, would it maybe make sense to slightly expand this dollar amount so that the money's been reviewed by the appropriate bodies in advance? There's an authorization town meeting and the funding, if it's not required, it doesn't get funded. I'm not saying, millions of dollars, but, maybe another 150 or something like that, if there's a potential for this type of a thing.
I'm never going to say no to more money, but for example, we already are working with the solid waste. There's much more regulation and protocol for solid waste. So the town allocated 2.5 million at the 2021 ATM for a PFAS destruction technology pilot program at the landfill. at the wastewater treatment plant. We just began that with our first round of testing, beginning of summer. It's a foam testing. Our treatment plant creates a lovely froth that's PFAS laden, and the consultants love it. And what they do is they skim it, they test it, they do all sorts of stuff. And it's out in a lab in Bellevue, Washington right now. So we actually don't have our first 2 round of tests back yet. So we already have been working with the landfill, the sewer. Excuse me, I keep saying landfill, sorry. The wastewater treatment facility, because we already knew that we had regulations and approvals from DEP to do that. And the reason we had such an amount allocated is we had precedent from other wastewater treatment facilities around Massachusetts. So, and it is costly. You're right, Stephen.
All right, so it doesn't sound like there's a need to expand the ask at this point.
It just seems I don't know where to throw that dart because I really hope it's the no need. That's the idea, is not to have any need for a situation like this. But, at the same time, I know the Water Commission took up PFAS this morning in their commission meeting about expanding water, continuing west of the airport. So there are growing needs, as you say. We just really can't pinpoint where they would be as far as impacting town operations. landfill and wastewater treatment facility, obvious.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Brooke?
Just as a comment, there was a PFAS summit, interdepartmental summit, just a number of months ago. So in the spirit of collaboration, all of the departments are talking together about PFAS as the elephant on the island. And there was another thing I was gonna say, and I can't remember what it was, but
What's going?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's talking about how it crosses over and trying to figure out what the source is getting to the sewer. So that if there is a destruction technology, that you can do it as far upstream as possible, so you're not having to destroy throughout all this effluent. But if you're finding out if there's places in the system where it's coming from, you move upstream. So there's huge conversations going on across the town and different departments on this.
Yeah. Brooke, thanks for bringing that up. Actually, it wasn't just a few months ago. It was 1 year ago this week. We had our PFAS summit.
Was it that long ago?
And
Wow.
we just spoke today about having PFAS Summit 2 in November. And our consultants walked through the landfill with Waste Options and other members of the town about 2 weeks ago. And we're putting together an agenda to have another PFAS Summit 2 with the airport and all of our other partners. No date yet.
Anybody else here? This one, I mean, I think like coastal resiliency will probably see more requests as the years go by with larger numbers in front of them than this one going away, unfortunately. But thank you. So sticking with 2025. Looks like we have light detection and ranging survey, LiDAR. Should be pretty simple.
Me again. This is another one I was asked to put together for Holly Backus, who is the town's preservation planner. Primarily because this request fits more within the select board strategic plan, primarily in the areas of historic preservation and transportation. What this is, and because I've been working with Holly on the restoration of Pleasant Street, this would be this is part of a CPC grant by which the town needs to have some matching funds and some work already done, apparently. The work already done needs to be the light detection and ranging technology. That's kind of like ground penetrating radar that goes up and down the sidewalks and historic curbing and everything and maps it out. Checks for roots and all other intrusions. And this would be specifically for the area of Upper Main, continuing on Pleasant. And Libby, help me out if you remember where it is, but I put it together for Holly. She actually had the entire application. I just cut and paste some of the summary in there. We did this previously. At the time it was only $40,000 and we did use that money. And that was for the Pleasant Street project we're doing right now. We just got a quote that was closer to like 78,000, 80,000 for it. So we figure by the time we do it, it'll be about 100,000.
Just to tag a little bit onto Greg, what Greg is saying, we've been talking about this for quite some time, and just to give you an idea of a location that we're talking about, Upper Main across from Pleasant, sort of in front of the Three Bricks, there are very large granite slabs that are really upended because of tree roots, and we are at a complete loss how to fix that without removing the tree roots, which obviously will mean no tree. So we need some really focused, and these obviously have to be restored and replaced and repaired in a historic manner. So we're trying to seek, sorry, my dog is sitting under my desk and I just kicked her really hard.
Oh,
I did not mean to do that. I'm sorry. She made a little noise. No, I'm completely distracted by her.
Here's the Upper Main project that we
Thank
want
you.
to continue all the way up. Yeah.
So we need some really focused, specialized help to help design what the fix to this is going to be.
Also, I'm glad you brought that up, Libby, because the scope that Holly put together is a little larger than the Pleasant Street that we did.
Yeah,
She and Chuck Larson and Holly and others did the LiDAR before. This is a little longer, but still
Yeah,
100,000 should cover it.
yeah, I'm just saying, like, that's an example of an area that we
Right.
would have, this would help address, hopefully.
Great, thank you for the background. So it sounds like the finished product is, historic sidewalk kind of rehab and maintenance. So obviously a priority, one of the many, but for downtown historically focused efforts. Any questions in the room? Jill?
Yeah, how does that work with like does the tree advisory commission weigh in on that, or are they part of that?
Mhm.
And they do it together?
Yep.
They'll be
When we-
consulted, yep,
Yep.
absolutely.
When we did the Pleasant Street walkthrough, we had tree advisory at Dale with us, Holly. We brought in Mickey and Brenda for the Disability Commission, and for 3 hours with the mapping of the LiDAR with our consultant EPG, we walked up and down. And now they come back with plans and discussions, and yeah, it's it's a lot.
Makes sense, important to collaborate. Anybody else in the room, or Stephen? Yep.
DJ.
Stephen, got it raised, yep.
Hey. Thank you. I just in a procedural matter, I think it would be beneficial if we could answer questions before they're asked. Can we preface this with ground mapping survey and then LiDAR? I know I always like to spell out the term before I put it in the parenthetic, but I think ground mapping survey LiDAR is going to be more meaningful to members of the finance committee and others. Light detection and ranging, before I looked at this, just as an example, in the Rory information, I was thinking this had to do with the at first blush, I thought it had to do with the new lighting bylaw.
Yeah.
So
I thought the same.
just a simple minor clarification in the heading, I think would be appropriate. Thank you.
No, great suggestion, because I share your. Okay, thank you, Stephen. Anybody else in the room here? Otherwise, looks like last but not least, 2025 Tacoma Way Town Employee Housing for
So-
11 million.
So quick overview on this, and I'm sure this won't become an issue, but just FYI, I need to leave here by 2:45. So this is a project we've been talking about for some time. The town owns some lots along Tacoma Way, and we've targeted them for employee housing. As you all know, the select board strategic plan is very much focused on community housing and town employee housing. And we don't have a specific design today for this. We have talked to Matt McEachran about kind of a configuration of perhaps some single family dwellings, some duplexes, all single family. We want to try to maximize the lot for housing, but also not have it too overly crowded. We are kind of considering it for a mix of employees, but you have to be a little cautious with that, because not all employees really mix together well. Like, for example, you wouldn't want a department head to be in the same duplex as their employee. So we're just trying to keep those sorts of things in mind, have some nice green space, have space between the units. So I think we're estimating around 8 units. That does not necessarily that would mean we don't know exactly how many bedrooms. It would depend on what we end up with for duplexes versus single family dwellings or whatever. But I think we're high level estimating that each unit would run about $1 million. Not including the soft costs, furniture and furnishings and all of that. So roughly 8 million, and then tack on a little more for those things that I just mentioned, and the unknown of what construction on Nantucket is going to be in a year and a half. Rick, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. We have a preliminary streetscape. you know, it's eight 5,000 square foot lots, and the parking is off street. Minimum of two parking spots per building. And as Libby said, some could be single family, some could be duplexes.
Okay, thanks for the background. I think this is the first time I'm really absorbing the details on this one. So, I mean, obviously 2025 requests, although based on, you know, the information that we have, it sounds very preliminary. I don't know if you guys all share that sentiment, but in terms of more, you know, specific questions, I guess I'll open the floor.
Well, I guess I would follow with that was with what the timing is and why, in fact, it belongs in 2025 in total versus money just for planning and
10% for planning. Valid question. Any insights there, guys? Why this one's, you know, seems like a pretty tight time frame for 2025?
Well, I think it's just that we don't want to lose a year, given our staffing issues and the likelihood that in the next 3 to 5 years, and this housing is going to take some time to obviously bid and design, procure, build. We're going to have some retirements coming up of perhaps high level positions in the town, and we're going to need places to house them. And we're finding that it's a lot easier and a lot more flexible if we can own the housing and control it rather than renting it. So we do acknowledge that these are not exact numbers and we don't have a specific design. We would hope that maybe by town meeting we might have that. It's just, this is really nobody's fault, but since housing is a very top priority of the town, yet we have many other projects that are on the drawing board, in the works, on the ground right now, and we're in the process of hiring a new housing director. So there's like 3 or 4 people working on this, but not full time. We're trying to devote our best efforts to get it done, but there's so many competing priorities that we haven't been able to pin this down 100%. However, we don't want to lose any more time. I guess that's the way I would describe it. I don't know, Rick or Brooke, if either of you want to add to that at all.
I'll recognize Brooke in here first.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question and then you could probably answer it in what you're gonna say?
Okay, Jill.
Who can be in this housing, right? Like who can apply to be in this housing?
So this housing is tended for municipal employees.
Yeah, but
School.
the airport says similar things. So like it's everybody, it's school, it's sewer, it's anybody. So
Right.
it's
Correct.
okay.
Or has that not been determined yet?
Well, so how units get allocated, we don't have a policy for that yet.
Right.
So that will
Okay.
come. But someone will have to be working for the town to live in this housing.
And so if they lose their job or they quit, do they have to move out?
There will be policies around that, yes.
Like some sort of buffer?
So the way town housing works now is it's a license agreement, it is not a lease.
Oh.
So a town employee is subject to a license agreement, which is a different set of legal protections. They're not eligible for tenancy protections like
I
a
got you.
person who has a lease. And that's critically important for employers to do it that way, so that they can tie the residency and the housing to their employment.
Gotcha.
So that's how the town does that now. So yes, the risk, and I talk about this all the time.
I know.
The risk of employer-based housing, whether it's municipality or private sector,
Is not
is
long
that
term.
people's job, losing your job means you could become homeless on Nantucket. That is a reality we face. To me, as a representative of the municipality, it's a risk we need to take because otherwise we're not solving this.
Yeah.
And I also really understand, given some of the other things that have crossed our bow for housing in terms of, it comes in and then it needs a supplemental request and it's not fully fleshed out and all of that. It would be a huge mistake on our part to delay this another year as the plan is being developed. Because even if it ends up costing more and we have to we can only do 4 of the units, and then we come back and do 4 more. We're talking about multiple units in this, so that money can be allocated to partially build this out if it's not enough as the design moves forward. So I'm feeling less risky on this than a single building that can't start, or the school project that is partially funded but shouldn't start until they have all of the funding. This is a little different because we're talking about multiple dwellings.
Yeah.
And I have been pushing on getting these lots planned and developed for a number of years now, and I understand the pressure and, you know, on the resources in town. I'm really grateful that Libby and the team are moving this forward, because I think it's gonna be critical, really critical for us.
Good insight, great points, all very valid. Christie?
Is there anything available, like a plot plan or design, or is this the first funding for this? Is there any?
We have some feasibility funding, that wasn't necessarily specific to this property that we were using for the initial sort of, design concepts. I think Rick, we can maybe share what Matt did so far.
Yeah, we have, like I said earlier, a streetscape and sort of, you know, what it would look, well, and where the units would be placed and where the parking is and so on and so forth. We can get that to you. Sue, I can send that.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think we've seen it, but just if we could resend it for an update,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if it, I mean, even subject to change, obviously, but that would be
Right.
at least something to tangibly get an idea. Real quick, just for clarification, so 8 structures, 4 single-family units, 4 duplexes. So would the 4 duplexes technically be 8 units? So then plus the 4 single families, there would be 12 housing units?
So just to be clear, there's 8, let's just call it 8 structures of the same size. So the single families would be like 3-bedroom homes.
Yep.
Right.
There's
And then
another structure identical to it, which would probably be an upstairs and downstairs duplex.
And so if each one of those are a housing unit, each one of those would technically have 2 housing units in it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like we're dealing with 12 housing units, and the same conversation we have at the airport.
It could be
Yeah.
16, it could be 8, right?
But just if you consider a duplex 2 separate units, then it sounds like we're dealing technically with 12 housing units,
Yeah.
which is better than 8, which, thank you, Jill.
Can you give us an update, because it's in the same area, on Tacoma Way, which was more of the private developer?
Tacoma Greens.
Hey, guys,
Oh.
before we move on, I'd like to comment on this topic.
Wait, let me just finish, please, Stephen, because you do interrupt, and I'm sorry, but the reason I'm bringing it up, because it's in
Jill,
the
I'm
same
sorry,
state.
Jill.
We don't have to get
I'm
into
sorry,
the
but Jill,
details.
Jill, you've spoken on this already, if I'm not incorrect. And typically what we do is we go around the table, everyone gets a chance to say what they want to say. And I'm talking primarily about the procedure here. We're on the topic of this particular housing, not Tacoma. So I apologize if you're upset with me, but there's a procedure, and it's, you know, we try to follow Robert's Rules of Order generally, so we're staying on topic. And then afterwards, if there's additional discussion, we can branch off.
All I wanted to say was, because it was the same area, it would affect how I roried it, actually, because it seems like this is really viable.
And so I guess before we get to that, are there any other questions regarding this specific request? Howard?
I do agree that this is really a great project. And seems like it can be done incrementally because there are a number of buildings. It seems to me that there's not a lot of planning on this, so the likelihood of breaking ground on the first facility, the first housing unit, is unlikely in the 2025 fiscal year. So let me just finish for a second, but it's possible. So my question is why don't we break this number down into some smaller bite-sized pieces so that there's installments in the fiscal years, not it all being front-loaded? Kind of asking, I'm kind of asking what the question.
I understand where you're coming from. I don't know the answer. I don't know if Brooke wants to take it, if you want to volley it to town admin. Brian? Town admin. Rick, yep.
I'll just take a crack at it. So it, sadly, you don't have the streetscape that has been developed. And while it makes perfect sense to break it into bite size, the current plan has parking that stretches along the entire front of the 8 lots. And there are things that would be, you're probably going to increase the cost by virtue of building half a parking lot, doing half of a picket fence down
I
the
wasn't suggesting that. I
Just-
didn't think it
so-
needed to be even increments. I think you need to think about the economies of scale of doing everything at the right time. And then what the right time is for each of the components of the project. So I think you might be able to measure what you want to do initially to make sure that you don't have to pay more for doing smaller components of it.
All right. That makes more sense.
So what, you might put half of it in this year and then the other half in another year, or you might put half of it in this, 2/3 of it in this year and 1/3 in the next year.
My only addition to that would be, 11 million right now sounds great, but if we're coming back in 2026 for a supplemental for another 1 or 2, does it make sense to have a finite, 5 or 6 million in 25, and then 26 might be the other half of the 11 plus that extra amount. So if we
Well,
might
you
be
tell
coming back
me,
anyway.
I
for
think
supplemental.
it's an optics issue more than anything else. I mean, you can always front load everything.
Right, yeah.
And then you got a huge number in any one year rather than kind of spreading out pain optically over multiple years.
But they're already doing that with the seasonal housing, like we're just
Right.
making that up for their funding,
But
right?
they didn't phase that funding out intentionally. They're just.
No, I know,
coming
they're
back
just
for the next-
adding for the add-on now to
I don't
finish.
think that that's kind of the same thing because they need more money.
Yeah.
Well, my guess
This-
is this will too, I
But
mean.
this is only a point of the optics of why do you put the whole chunk in the single fiscal year?
Okay, yeah, very,
Yeah, you have to look at it as it's not just parcel by parcel. There are things that you can accomplish on a broader scale, such as putting in all of the streetscape structure, your infrastructure. Those kind of things can be done en masse.
But we already acknowledge that.
All right,
and
so
that might only
by,
take 6 months.
right, but I think the other thing too is that, again, every time you're delaying in the process, the cost is getting driven up.
You're not delaying anything. You're just putting the numbers where they belong.
Are you really? So we could go back and forth on this, but I don't wanna spend more time on this
Yeah.
right now.
Steven,
Hey, thanks, BJ. So what we're struggling with is in a way solving for solving. And in this particular project, what we need is some additional information. I think not just the narrative of what would be on the sites, not just the plan of the lots that are involved. By the way, that narrative might include 2 different scenarios that are beneficial to the town. So,
Yeah.
You're not locked in. Some illustrations, and a cost breakdown. And I think the other important element of the cost breakdown is some idea of what your front end loaded costs are going to be. Anyone who's familiar with development costs is going to know site development is going to be first and foremost. But I think through the small exercise of whoever the consultant is or who will be, who's involved in this small exercise with respect to the amount of time, that helps not only ourselves as an advisory group, but the finance committee and eventually town meeting where this could get picked apart to have a better handle on what's being asked and where a more natural than not breaking point, to Howard's point, would be with respect to cost. So for instance, we have a package in front of us that includes all those things I've mentioned. It includes the cost breakdown, and we see that it might make sense that in your process as town administration, town manager, that this project will go through hard utility development, any roadway, and the first 3 or 4 homes. And that might be the first ask. And the second would be the next year. Or it may be that you've determined through that process that you're going to put it all in at once. I don't know. But I think it's it's not an academic process for us to ask for those, nor for you to provide them, because it's going to give everyone a better handle on this. And I understand that it's, part of the problem with trying to get that information and why you're asking for basically a number up front, based upon, some of this work having been completed, not all of it, having the resources to document, is because the town doesn't have the resources to do this work, to document this. Capcom identified that more than a few years ago, with town manager, but it's not an easy fix. You got to put people in housing, and part of what we're looking to do here is develop housing. So I think we all just need to, take a step back, acknowledge that there needs to be more information, that on our end, that information isn't going to be perfect, but it needs to be something that we can evaluate with some degree of meaningfulness. And on your end, that, it's problematic, maybe problematic to provide that to some extent, but there is a kind of a bare minimum in order for this to be considered less than preliminary, and therefore something we can advance, talking about such a large dollar number. So that's a lot in one long sentence, but I think it's all relevant. And I'd ask town manager and assistant managers to consider that approach, so we can bring this back at one of our placeholder dates and evaluate it a little bit more concretely, and then make a recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Rick, Libby, you guys okay with that? Trying to get some supplemental for a future meeting?
Yeah, it's gonna take us a little time because we're really wrapped up with some personnel stuff and the special town meeting, but yeah, I understand what you're looking for.
Yeah, great, thank you. Is there anything else with regards to this before we get to the Tacoma Green? Anybody? Okay, Jill, in relation to this request,
I don't have anything more.
Tacoma Green, you weren't?
Oh, I just didn't know if that was moving forward or
Right.
not, and so that would kind of, help get a bigger picture of what's going on there. Cause we've got the seasonal and then this, and this sounds important.
They're all important.
And they're all.
Yeah.
And they're all.
No,
the same.
but no, but
Okay.
they're especially
All the
important
same
if one
place,
is,
right?
but if one's off the table, it's especially.
No. Tacoma Green received the additional LIHTC financing from the state. I have not had a recent update, but my understanding was that financing was supposed to close sometime this fall, and that the project would move forward next year.
Okay.
So that, as far as I know, that is still on track. I've heard nothing to the contrary.
Yep.
I would just, this is a really great project, if you got the sites in hand, isn't that the most huge hurdle of all to
This,
come?
Oh, yeah.
this is an asset we've had that we've been waiting for this to come along, and I know leaps of faith financially are hard, and it's not, and the job of this group is to not take
Maybe-
that risk.
But maybe you do.
But
need
if
to.
I'm gonna pick one thing we should do a leap of faith
Right.
on, in all the things in front of us, this is it.
Well, let's,
Noted.
Because
let's look at that.
Yeah.
the reason we don't have capacity and bandwidth to find the numbers is because we don't have places for people to live.
Yeah.
It all ties back to this.
Chicken
I
and
think
egg.
what gets confusing for me personally is when it's all, like, some of it's HTF and some of it's town and some of it, and I think that goes back to who can live in it and all that, and
Yeah,
how that
there's-
works. And I think it would be helpful. I know, especially just being on the finance committee, if there's a way of having a better overview of that at some point. I'm not saying right now, but
Yes.
so that people, not that they have to prioritize who gets what, just so that they know, hey, this is dedicated for this, or this
That's right.
is dedicated for everybody.
Any other questions on this one? Stephen, hand up.
Yeah, thanks, PJ. Just a quick comment on back to my original on solving for solving. I think one of the things, Brooks has said it, I said it before. The problem is we don't have the resources because we don't have the housing. But I think there needs for our evaluation to be meaningful. Look, these are going to come up, these housing type requests are going to come up more and more. Obviously, at a certain point, they'll taper off, we think. But the dollar numbers are getting larger because there's funds available to start to attack these. That's a double-edged sword in a sense, because once this gets to town meeting, we're not on the policy side of it, we're not on the perception side of it. But with respect to our making evaluations and recommendations, I prefer to make recommendations that stand up at town meeting. And I think where this is going to be going at town meeting over time, not necessarily just this request, but we've seen the writing on the wall, is that the dollar numbers are growing, the frequency of requests are growing. So we need to have a deeper set of information and the resources in place to be developing it. And the purpose of bringing all that up is to say, I don't know, again, we're not policy oriented, but I don't know if until there is a resource that's available to the town, if this is in the cards, who will be on staff to be coordinating these type of things, is whether it makes sense to be hiring, I think we have a strategy, somebody who handles strategic projects. I'm just wondering if that can be pulled into that umbrella where they are overseeing someone who is a consultant who is trying to work out some of these details, not just on this project, but other ones that are coming. I just think that until we have personnel in place for the town, there needs to be some type of a process in place other than it being a distributed model of accountability, because it's getting to us and we're not getting the information. We're kind of towing a line on that, both for ourselves and FinCom and town meeting, but I think it's going to become a more critical element that these things are better mapped out in advance. And certainly on this one, we've got, as I mentioned before, we've got to have some flexibility. It's going to be a chicken or the egg thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Okay, I think that wraps up their 2025s. Should we be going through the out years quick? I mean, I think I'm personally okay. There's a couple big ones down the line. Unless anybody else, I know Libby's out of here, 2:45.
Watch the select board collision presentation and you'll get really good information about all the out years. It kind of was done there and it's recorded. So
Okay, sounds good.
Do it again.
Yep. Okay, I think with that being said, we're good with today's presentation by town admin. I know there's, I think, 2 separate line items here to get some additional details on. So we'll wait for some follow-up on that. Otherwise, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Stephen, do you want me to just plow through the rest of the agenda?
If it's okay, what I'll do is I'll just pop in on annual report and recommendations work group. I'm pleased to announce we've got 2 volunteers, PJ and Howard. I'll coordinate.
I think recruit is like.
Thank you. Yep.
At least we did last week. But
I watched what happened in the parking lot.
A brick came out of the building and went right to a car. No, I just want to let you guys know that, and then just kind of spotlight to Howard and PJ. I'll be in touch. Ideally, we meet next Tuesday briefly, maybe a half an hour there, and coordinate that with you guys and Sue, and we'll go from there. The committee reports, I'd like to jump over that just for a moment, and then I'll give it back to you, Peter. Good of the order. We're elaborating on that in the agenda. It's a item for committee self-reflection, which means what are we doing too much of, too little of, wrongly, perhaps, or rightly. So if anyone has any comments, if not today, next week, those are appreciated. This committee wants to understand what its membership thinks, and due to open meeting laws, that discussion should be in an open meeting. And I have no concerns with that particular requirement. So any comments for this week?
Yeah, I have one, and it relates to this question of housing and allocation and use of housing. If we want to set an agenda item, I would not mind, and maybe even inviting Tucker to talk to this group about how housing units get allocated based on how they're funded. I think it would be really helpful, and this question of the airport and who can live in airport designated housing, I can't answer that. I can't speak to that, but I can speak to Chapter 40B, affirmative and fair housing, and the housing trust, the restrictions on how, on units, created by the housing trust. And how they're allocated, municipal preference in our projects that are,
Yeah.
part of our shy list. So I'd be happy to take 5 or 10 minutes at a future meeting and help explain.
That'd be great. Right.
Yeah. So, Brooke, thank you. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna footnote that so that once we get through, I don't think it applies in particular to any of the requests other than the licensing as a condition of employment, which we've touched on. So we'll put that on for our this season discussion topics after we get probably, I think, to the point in our process where we do the Rory up downs. So it'll be a little bit off, but it is something that I think also would be helpful and useful for us going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, Howard.
Just real quick, so we've got a lot of housing things going on, and it would be really great for optics if we could summarize them someplace so that, you know, what it is, how much has been allocated, how much more is needed. So, because you're gonna go to town meeting and somebody's gonna say, well, there's a lot of money,
Yeah.
you know, earmarked for this.
That exists for the housing trust funding. and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Already, that
That would be
documentation.
A lot of this is outside of the
And I'm
housing
sorry.
trust. fund.
Correct.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
But now
And
we're
I think
adding
that's-
other things.
Right, I think that's what people.
We're
wanna
stepping up on the
understand.
municipal side.
Christie, back to you.
Are you saying you'd talk to Tucker or you'd have him?
Would invite Tucker.
Yeah, because I think for us, I think a big thing is looking at each project and how do they relate together
Right.
would be really good for us. And as an advisory committee, I would love any more information possible. I mean, so I think it would put some context on each project. So I'd totally be in favor of that.
Well, and the interesting thing now is that the funding is in place for the Affordable Housing Trust,
Yeah.
right? Through the,
Right.
and the debt exclusions already. So
Right.
those aren't coming here.
No.
Because they're already funded.
So you don't really know what's happening.
So
You know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah.
you're not
that's
gonna
coming
look at anything.
direct to the select board for
Yeah,
approval.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, got
so
it.
that's an interesting component of this as well, whereas year by year debt exclusions, we're passing through here.
Hmm.
And they won't be anymore.
Yeah, gotcha.
So borrowing authorizations, I don't know whether we.
But the
reviewed
town
this,
stuff, and
but-
that's why we're looking
But
at
it's,
these
it's,
Yeah.
it's
stuff around
it's
HT.
a rapidly expanding puzzle, part of the puzzle, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, what would probably be helpful and a little bit more constructive, at least from my perspective, is getting a little bit more of a white paper involved in the process, because there are other things going on, such as what are other funding sources that the town could be tapping into, or any of these projects can be tapping into. CPC comes right to the top of my head in that case.
I can sum up.
Polarities or whatever aside, there's still, having a sense of what's out there would be helpful. Second thing is understanding why are we moving into being landlords here? And I picked up some of that today from Libby, from the sense of right now we're doing a lot of rentals and there are downsides to the rentals, but being able to articulate that on a piece of paper, I think is vital. Not only for this group right here, but I think when we get to the public as well too, having those bullet points available makes a big difference with that. So that's why I'm suggesting to expand the scope of this a little bit more, not go crazy with it, but expanding it too. And again, some of the other potential barriers that may be out there. Is Stephen on? Stephen, I don't want, I want to be very, I want to be very gentle here because I'm going to invoke the HDC in about 5 seconds.
I did, Barry, before you go down that road, and not to be
Yeah.
protective of the HTC, but I think we're kind of getting off into a level of detail that's beyond just purely procedural with respect to our agenda. I think what I'm hearing is we have concerns about housing, and we should have, in addition to having Tucker come in, perhaps preliminarily, we should have a meeting where we're discussing some of our concerns, where it's publicly noticed. Sue, is there something I missed?
She was just saying Tucker would have been here for this meeting, but he had last minute conflict,
Yeah, he would.
Yeah.
which is why he wasn't at this meeting.
Okay.
So I think my point is procedurally, we're kind of outside good of the order. And we should maybe kind of try and pull it back in. Not that you can't speak, but if you can steer us back that way, Barry?
Yeah, I'm gonna respectfully disagree with you because here's the thing that, at least from a personal perspective, as I'm sitting on this committee, I am weighing multiple requests from multiple housing type developments. And there's also that due diligence that has to go before the public as well too, about how these decisions are being formulated. So
I'm not contesting that, Barry.
that's all I'm saying is
It's
that
not on the agenda.
I don't, Stephen, let me finish. What I don't want to do is just take one or two subjects and think that will be the crux of everything. There's an opportunity here that I think isn't just us, but goes beyond us as well too. But for some of the decision bases that I'm trying to deal with on this, that level of information is important to see how that all plays out.
We'll get all that when we.
And that's why I'm trying to see if there's a way to consolidate that information
Okay.
into something meaningful.
Well, if it is all helpful too, I think the finance committee wanted to ask for the same thing, so maybe it's just.
So there we go.
Stephen,
So
Yeah.
Barry, I gotta
Yeah.
respectfully disagree with you, respectfully disagreeing. My point wasn't that we shouldn't talk about these things.
All right, well.
My point, in fact, please let me finish.
Yeah.
I stated
Right.
at the beginning that I support this broader discussion. And in fact stated that we should have a meeting to conduct that discussion.
Okay,
But that's not on our agenda item this afternoon. So that's why I brought up,
We'll
it's
get
not
on
on our
that.
agenda for today.
that's fine.
Yeah.
It was moving that
Yeah, I
direction.
got
That
it.
was that.
thanks for the gentle push.
Thank you.
Very appreciate it. So good to the order. Stephen, anything else on your end? Anybody in here? I know that we're all getting a little tight on our
Yeah.
2 hour
Motion
window.
to adjourn.
Committee, I hate to say that, who's going back to committee reports?
Oh.
Yes,
is there
I think you
anything
might have
else?
been leaving that to me, which,
True.
any in the room, committee reports?
No,
Nothing.
I'll just get you
Notable?
information from coastal
Right.
resiliency.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. So I think we checked off all the boxes, date our next meeting, Thursday, October 19th, 1 PM here, I'm assuming. Otherwise, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Stephen on the motion.
I'm an aye, and then I quick comment. Please, Peter and Howard, stay and don't shut off the meeting, Sue, just for a minute. We'll
Howard
get our
walked in
time
and I
squared
have a
away.
doctor's appointment at 3 that I'm already gonna be late for.
Yeah. Okay,
So
Yeah.
I'll have to catch up with you after, I'm sorry.
yeah, fair enough.
On your motion,
Aye.
Brooke,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Barry.
Aye.
Aye, I'm an aye. Thank you, Stephen.
Sue.
I'll be in
Thank
touch.
you, Sue.
Stay safe down there.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Jill, let's propose it.
Great, I'd love to stay.
Yeah.
Meeting on,
Housing.
on
Because Denise was even saying.
a summary on
Yeah.
how
She